In the gilded halls of 18th century Vienna, a name echoed that would change music forever. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. But behind the powdered wigs and thunderous applause lies a story far darker and more complex than you could ever imagine. A tale of staggering genius, crippling debt, a bitter rivalry, and a mysterious death that continues to baffle historians to this day. This isn't just the story of a composer. It's the story of a man who flew too close to the sun, and the secrets that were buried with him. From the age of 3, it was clear that Wolfgang was no ordinary child. While other toddlers were learning to walk, he was picking out chords on the harpsichord. By 5, he was composing his first pieces. By 6, he was a seasoned performer, touring the grand courts of Europe with his older sister, Nanal, under the watchful and often demanding eye of their father. Leopold, himself a respected composer, saw his son not just as a gift from God, but as a golden ticket. He paraded Wolfgang before kings and queens, billing him as a miracle of nature. The boy would play blindfolded, improvise fugues on the spot, and identify any note played on any instrument. The crowds were mesmerized. This tiny child was a phenomenon, a living, breathing spectacle. But for Wolfgang, this whirlwind life on the road was exhausting. Constant travel, relentless pressure to perform, and a childhood spent in drafty carriages instead of a playground began to take its toll. He was a superstar before the word existed, but he was also just a boy, yearning for a home he barely knew. As Mozart entered adulthood, he desperately wanted to break free from his father's control and the provincial constraints of his hometown, Salzburg. His eyes were set on Vienna, the musical capital of the world. In 1781, against his father's furious objections, he made the move. It was a gamble that paid off. At first, Vienna was captivated by his talent. He was the talk of the town, a virtuoso pianist and a brilliant composer. Commissions poured in. He wrote symphonies, concertos, and sonatas that redefined the very language of music. And it was here he created his operatic masterpieces. Like The Marriage of Figaro, this opera was a sensation, but it was also a scandal. Its story, which poked fun at the aristocracy, was revolutionary. It challenged the established social order, suggesting that a clever servant could outwit his noble master. The emperor himself, Joseph II, loved the music, but was wary of its message. The opera was a triumph, but it also made Mozart powerful enemies. He was playing a dangerous game, using his art to comment on the world around him, and not everyone appreciated his audacity. Now, let's talk about the man who would become Mozart's shadow, his rival, his supposed nemesis, Antonius. The popular story, immortalized in plays and movies, paints Salieri as a mediocrity, consumed by jealousy, who plotted Mozart's downfall. But is that the truth? Salieri was, in fact, one of the most respected and powerful musicians in Vienna. He was the official court composer to the emperor. He was successful, wealthy, and influential. He certainly recognized Mozart's superior genius, a fact that may have privately frustrated him. But did he actively sabotage Mozart? The evidence is thin. Their relationship was more complex than simple hatred. They were professional rivals, competing for the same prestigious jobs and patrons. They respected each other's work, and at times even collaborated. The narrative of Salieri as the villain is compelling, but it might be just that, a story. The real drama wasn't a cloak and dagger plot. It was the daily struggle Mozart faced. Despite his fame, he was terrible with money. He and his wife, Constanza, lived a lavish lifestyle they couldn't afford. Lavish apartments, fine clothes, and constant entertaining drained his income as fast as he earned it. He was soon drowning in debt, writing desperate, begging letters to his friends for loans. The genius who could conjure heavenly music was trapped in a very earthly hell of financial ruin. By 1791, Mozart was working at a feverish pace, driven by both inspiration and desperation. He was composing two of his greatest works simultaneously: the whimsical opera, The Magic Flute, and his solemn, bountiful Requiem Mass. The Requiem, however, was shrouded in mystery from the start. The commission came from a stranger, a messenger dressed head to toe in grey, who refused to reveal the identity of his patron. He simply delivered an anonymous letter with a handsome down payment, requesting a mass for the dead. In his fragile state of health, overworked and paranoid, Mozart became obsessed with the idea that this was a premonition. He believed he was writing the soundtrack to his own funeral. He told his wife, "I am writing this requiem for myself." His health was declining rapidly. He suffered from high fevers, severe swelling, and agonizing pain. His mind, once a fountain of endless melody, was now clouded by dark premonitions and a growing fear that he was being poisoned. He worked on the requiem obsessively, convinced he was in a race against death itself. The beautiful, terrifying music he was writing seemed to be pulling him further and further into the abyss. In the final weeks of his life, Mozart was confined to his bed, too weak to even sit at a piano. Yet, he continued to compose, humming the parts of the requiem to his student, Susmer, who wrote them down at his bedside. On the evening of December 4th, his condition worsened. Friends gathered around him. In a moment of clarity, he tried to sing the alto part of the Lacrimosa, one of the most heart-wrenching sections of his unfinished masterpiece. But his strength failed him. He wept, turned his face to the wall, and just before 1 in the morning on December 5, 1791, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart died. He was only 35 years old. Because of his dire financial situation, he was given the cheapest possible funeral and buried in a common, unmarked grave in the St. Mark's Cemetery. The exact location was quickly forgotten. The greatest musical genius the world had ever known was lost. His final resting place unknown to this day. So, what really killed Mozart? The official cause was a severe military fever. But, for centuries, rumors have swirled. Did his rival Salieri poison him out of jealousy? Decades later, a senile and guilt-ridden Salieri supposedly confessed, but there's no real evidence to support it. Others point to medical malpractice, rheumatic fever, or kidney failure. The mystery of his death is as compelling as the mystery of his genius. But here is the final, astonishing twist in the story. The mysterious stranger in grey who commissioned the Requiem. He was not an omen of death. He was the steward of a minor nobleman, Count Franz von Walsegg, an amateur musician who intended to pass off Mozart's Requiem as his own composition to honor his recently deceased wife. The grand, dark conspiracy Mozart imagined was nothing more than a petty act of plagiarism by an obscure count. Mozart wasn't poisoned by a rival or stalked by a spectre of death. He was a victim of his own relentless work ethic, his poor health, and a lifetime of stress that began when he was a child prodigy. The tragedy of Mozart is not that he was murdered, but that he worked himself to death for a world that celebrated his genius but ultimately failed to save the man. His music, however, achieved immortality. Thank you for watching. If you were captivated by this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Impact Figures for more deep dives into the lives that shaped our world.